get them on, right? You have three guys that are high-end players now at that spot. From your perspective, how do you sort of make it work with all three?
I think you start out with we got to have a bread and butter. You know, we're going to have two guys on the field as our base starting point. You know, and they're just going to rotate. You know, which is a good thing. You got three really good dominant level players that can rotate, so that's good. And then from there, you know, there's a lot of ways you can get all three of them out there. We'll let that remain to be seen. But I think the sweet spot for us as coaches and them as players is just keeping it efficient to where they're still maximized, they're doing what they're good at, you know, and it's not overload where it's too much where we're slowing them down, you know, but also having a schematic advantage to where we're taxing the offense with the kind of looks and alignments that we can get into.
Is he in your room all the time? Because he also is an interior guy. He hasn't done that a lot at Penn State.
He is in my room full time.
Full time. Yeah. Okay, so how does that interior stuff translate?
There's a little bit difference, you know, different in terms of how they approach the blockers. When you're rushing on the edge, they're a little more on the edge. You know, rushing on the inside, they got to clear a little bit more of the body, you know. But we train a bunch of different techniques in our individual, and you know, there's some transfer to even what you know we work when we're working edge moves. You know, and then when we transition them inside, you know, there's some carryover there, but there's some other things that we have to work, and we have, and we will.
So you're just like not going to let him out of the room, basically, right?
That's right. Well, I mean, yeah, of
you
course.
Lock the door, and he's not leaving your room.
I want all the good players, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, for sure. But you know, our whole front works together all the time. You know, whether it's meetings or drills or working group, you know, rush lane type assignment. You know, type thing. So, you know, it's all hands on deck all the time with the entire staff and, you know, players, you know, like D linemen are talking to them about some of their experience in there. So that's all been good.
And one thing about the finishing, you know, there's a physical aspect of that, a mental aspect. Is there also kind of a tenacity or meanness or toughness or aggression that it's in him?
A lot of times it's the mentality over the physical ability, you know, and you see that, and that's what he has, you know, and he has elite physical traits. So, you know, he's got the mentality to finish, the traits to finish, and that's what you saw, at least in my opinion, on his college film, and that's what we expect to see here.
What does that mean, mentality? I mean,
it's kind of what those words that you said: focus, intent, nastiness, grit, grind, all those things. You know, however you want to qualify it, I guess. But yeah, his mindset is elite as a finisher.
Brandon Brown had said that during the evaluation process, when you get a guy like Abdul and you're looking at him and breaking him down, that it was important for the scouting staff and the coaching staff to kind of, you know, explore the possibilities before you even had him in the building, before you had him. How exciting was that for you just to think about it? You know, some of the coaches, like talking to Shea Tierney yesterday, like he said, you put so much in the draft process and then you don't get the guy, you're like, oh. But how exciting was that to think about the possibilities, to come up with them, and then to have him walk through the doors and know, I got this guy now and I can work with him?
Yeah, it was really exciting. You know, spent a lot of time with him in the draft process. Obviously, started to get my hopes up a little bit as the process went on. And then on draft night, when Jacksonville traded, I got a little nervous. That was a little bit of a curveball, but yeah, I mean, every exposure I had to him, you know, you just feel the passion, you feel the mentality for the game. He's smart, he works, you know. So yeah, it's hard not to get attached to, you know, a guy like that or those traits or qualities about a person. So I definitely got excited about the possibility. You know, anything can happen on draft night. We're the third pick. Who knows what would have happened in the first two? But you know, my fingers were crossed. And then you know, when he got here, obviously it was ecstatic, and it's been a great start so far.
When did he first pop up on your radar? When did they come to you?
There was a day in January, my son's birthday, January 18th, and that was when he first was put on my radar, which was earlier than normal in the draft process. Most of the time as coaches, we don't start that till February, you know, March, but I think the nature of the pick and where it was at, you know, I got a little early nudge to do a little homework there, and it was a quick experiment. You know, in terms of watching the film, it was a very easy evaluation. You know, obviously after that we did some work and got to know the person and you know, tried to test the you know, the learning ability and all those types of things that are always involved. So we did our due diligence there. But yeah, physically watching the tape, it was an early ask, it was an early eval, and an early answer. It was yes.
So you went home. You
I
knew
was
what the wish was going to be for the birthday.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It was a weekend, so I didn't get back until the week. I took a look, but yeah, it was an easy evaluation.
How important was it for you that once you guys draft a guy like Abdul, a young rookie, a top 5 pick, to talk to your other guys, maybe not so much Burns, but Kayvon. At the time, it's still, his contractual future was still up in the air. Was important for you to kind of reach out and kind of make sure he knew what role he had in your plans, and that I assume from your perspective it didn't change?
I don't know. In general, I think transparency and honesty and communication is always good in a room. As a coach, I pride myself on that. And these guys always know from the day I got here, I always let them know I always want good players in the room. It's our job to add good players, good pieces to the defense. My wheelhouse is the position I coach. I don't affect any other decisions other than outside linebackers, so I'm not necessarily going to advocate for corners or D linemen or receivers. But if I'm presented with the opportunity to add a good player and they ask my opinion, at least I'm always going to say yes. Good. A rising tide lifts all boats, type of thing. So anyway, I tried as best I can as a coach to always operate with that transparency. I always give them a message on draft day, any year, anywhere I've ever been, about kind of my approach and our team's approach and what they can expect, and no matter who we add, how that will change moving forward or won't change. So we have conversations all the time. The relationships are pretty strong in there, so the communication lines were always open, and I wouldn't say it was any more important. It just was a piece of communication that was necessary to have, and we had those conversations.
Charlie, did he remind you of anybody when you were watching him?
I'd say bits and pieces. A little bit of Hassan Reddick in terms of, he's a little bit bigger, but in terms of movement ability, for not being like a 6'5" guy in that 6'2", 6'3" range, how they move reminded me of him. They're both from similar areas of the country around the Philly area. So I'd say him early on, but then the finishing ability, just kind of different body type, but Chandler Jones, stood out to me. I thought though he's the best finisher I've been around, and Abdul reminded me of that.
How does the versatility of all the new additions kind of play into the pass rush plan for this year, with Abdul obviously everywhere, Darius Alexander, even though we haven't seen him yet, and Chauncey Golston come in?
Yeah. The versatility will factor in a lot. We've got a lot of different body types, a lot of different skill sets, and it can only add to those options. And we'll be as creative as we can be. There's no doubt. Not like I said a minute ago, the sweet spot for us coaches is making it efficient. We can't do too much where guys slow down because they're thinking. We got to find the sweet spot of how can we tax the opponent, but also let our guys play fast. And we'll continue to identify that. We'll test some things in training camp and keep working through it until the season starts. But week one, we should have the plan identified so they can go out there and do what they do best.
How does year two with the Giants help you kind of establish
Big time.
that?
Big time. I mean, year two relationships are stronger. Year two understanding of the defense is stronger with Burns and Thibodeau, the guys that played the most last year. Coming back this year, I can already see a difference in them, and how they've been practicing, their level of understanding of the defense, and then also because they have that foundational understanding and requisite, not mastery, but understanding of what's going on, we can now add more things to the plate, which in any year would have been a big deal. But now this year, when you add Abdul, you add Chauncey, and we have more opportunities to be versatile and multiple, it pays off that they have that year two understanding from our baseline of what we put in last year.